Hello all, a very good morning to all of you. This is Vilasini from Veranda IAS and friends, இன்னைக்கு என்ன பார்க்க போறோம்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா the daily current affairs analysis for the dates 19th and 20th August 2025. So yes, I know we have all entered the midweek and usually when the midweek begins, so does midweek blues. But irrespective of that, நீங்கள் எல்லாருமே ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கணும் that you are preparing for a competitive exam. So here, it is like a marathon race. So consistency and having a certain degree of perseverance is what will help you attain your goal. So have this mindset. So every time you feel like giving up, ஒன்னே ஒன்று யோசிச்சு பாருங்க, where did this all begin and why did you begin this? So in the thought மட்டும் இருந்துட்டே இருந்துச்சுன்னா you will have a strong sense of drive and motivation to push you towards reaching your goal, right? So yes, so usually every time we start ஒரு positive noteல ஆரம்பிப்போம். So on this context there was something interesting that I wanted to talk to all of you. So yes, R&D அப்படின்னா என்ன? Research and development, right? So talking about R&D, what I wanted to tell you is நீங்க ஒரு ஆஸ்பிரண்டா இருக்கும்போது, right, you're not just an aspirant but you are in the future going to become a person who needs to be aware of whatever is happening around you. So yes, உங்களோட மைண்ட் உங்களோட திங்கிங்கை ஒரு ரிசர்ச் அண்ட் டெவலப்மெண்ட் பர்ஸ்பெக்டிவ்ல நீங்கள் மாற்ற ஆரம்பித்தா யூ கேன் see a lot of improvement. For example, anytime you observe anything around you, right, ஒரு நார்மல் பர்சன் ஒரு விஷயத்தை பார்க்குறதுக்கும் ஆஸ் அன் ஆஸ்பிரண்ட் நீங்கள் அதே விஷயத்தை பார்க்குறதுக்கும் ஏகப்பட்ட வித்தியாசம் இருக்குது. ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள், when you look at something, you need to understand what is the issue, why is it happening, what are the trigger factors, what will be the implications. இதை அட்ரஸ் பண்ணுறதுக்காக ஏதாவது சொல்யூஷன்ஸ் கண்டுபிடிக்கலாமா? Can we come up with some innovative solutions? Think along those lines because நீங்கள் solutions யோசிக்க, right, you are creating a problem solving mindset, something that bureaucrats require, right? So remember, as an aspirant, having a mindset, right, of an R&D development is very, very important for you because the more you think of solutions, the more there will be a spark, the more the ideas, and once there are more ideas, the better clarity and better execution, right? So ஏதாவது ஒரு விஷயத்தை பார்க்கும்போது think of it from a different perspective. As an aspirant, how do you observe this? How do you understand this? What are some potential solutions that you can decode for this? So in the angle யோசிச்சு பாருங்க, you will see a difference in the way you think, operate, strategize and execute, right? On this note, let us take a look at the topics. So 19th August ல இருந்து ஆரம்பிக்கலாம். As you all know, we are referring to the Hindu International Edition, okay? So looking at the topics, number 1, India bloc. Okay, the India bloc considers moving a motion seeking the removal of the Chief Election Commissioner. So in the context like yes, Bihar polls special intensive revision, right? And what the alliance particularly feels, the opposition led alliance, avanga enna nenikranga, right, with regard to the Chief Election Commissioner. So they don't want this person to continue because there was a controversy going around, right? So Rahul Gandhi has accused of vote theft having taken place, right? So in the context for the examination point of view, the controversy is not required, but here election commission, right, adoda constitutional mandate, that is required. We will try looking at it from that angle, okay? So in the context yes, unga GS paper 2 polity this features as an important area, constitutional and non-constitutional bodies. Next, alert issued against Amebic Menenjoalitis in Kozhikode, okay? So it anyway state based article இருந்தாலுமே, right, diseases in news could be very significant from the examinations point of view. So in the context this topic features in your GS paper 3 science and tech under the scope of health and diseases, okay? Next, any person missing from the draft roll may file a claim with a copy of Aadhaar, says the election commission, right? So idu with regard to the special intensive revision which is taking place in Bihar, right? Idha pathi nam already nariya discuss pannirkom. So we'll take a quick recap on this, and idu kuda pathina unga GS paper 2 polity it features as an important topic. Next, unemployment rate declines to 5.2% in July, right? So in the context topics like poverty, unemployment, right? So இது எல்லாமே உங்க GS paper 3 economy ல வருது. Poverty as an issue comes in your GS paper 2 social justice as well, but here specifically they're going to be talking about terms like the labor force participation rate, right? With regard to the unemployment rates, trends என்ன இருக்கு between rural and urban regions, men and women, இது எல்லாமே பார்க்க போறோம். So in the context unemployment features in your GS paper 3 economy. Okay, next, talks on limiting use of plastics must be built on mutual trust. Yes, so you all know the global plastics treaty, one of the most expected treaties, a legally binding treaty, failed to come into existence. Why? Because lack of consensus irundichu between two different blocks, right? So in the context plastic is a menace, plastic is a big time issue that the world needs to talk about, but here because of differences of opinion we are finding it very difficult to arrive at a legally binding consensus or a legally binding treaty. So in the context about plastics, management of plastics, a few highlights on the global plastics treaty, why didn't it work out, இது எல்லாமே பார்க்க போறோம். So here plastics, right, pollution, இது எல்லாமே பாத்தீங்கன்னா it will come under your GS paper 3 environment. Okay, next, Zelensky and Trump hope for trilateral talks with Putin. So yes, after the Alaska summit took place where Putin and Trump had met, right, many things were discussed. Adiyum nama paaka porom, and further updates on this, right, what was the interaction between Zelensky and Mr. Trump, right, and what is the way forward, what is the opinion of the European countries, what is the stand of US, what is the stand of Russia, what is the stand of Ukraine, இது எல்லாமே பார்க்க போறோம். So in the context this features as a topic in your GS paper 2 international relations. Okay, so now moving forward, right, if we talk about this next set of topics for today's paper 20th August 2025, number 1, US air cover, EU troops may be part of Ukraine's security pledge. So an update to the previous topic that we just saw in 19th, right? So இன்னைக்கு morning இருந்த update, so GS paper 2 IR this features as an important area. Saltwater crocodile population in Bengal's Sundarban Biosphere Reserve shows substantial increase, says a survey. So in the context yes, about Sundarbans, right? Sundarbans as an ecotone, Sundarbans as a biosphere reserve, in the madriyana terms we will try understanding, and we'll also understand a few things about species like the saltwater crocodile, some characteristics, some threats that it faces, IUCN red list what is its categorization, இது எல்லாமே பார்க்க போறோம் along with some PYQs as well. So in the context species in news, protected sites, etc. come in your GS paper 3 environment. Okay, next பாத்தீங்கன்னா early embryos pull to shape how they attach inside the uterus. So yes, a new study has spoken about why miscarriages take place. Okay, so earlier miscarriages associated the factors were what, and now what is the opinion, how has it shifted? So in the context embryo implantation in the uterine wall, right, strong embryo, weak embryo, about the mechanical forces, idu pathina panna study நம்ம பார்க்க போறோம் along with significant findings. So in the context science and technology this plays a vital role. So here this topic features in your GS paper 3 science and tech. Okay, so next பாத்தீங்கன்னா the Derozio effect. So yes, talking about the socio-religious reform movements and talking about movements which took place in the 19th century, right? There was a person by the name Henry Vivian Derozio. So ivar he led a movement called the Young Bengal movement. So here in the context of this Derozio had a contribution, some of his major poems, right, and how did he promote the notion of an egalitarian society, how did he promote free thinking amongst people, இது எல்லாமே will be covered in this. Okay, so this is from your GS paper 1 modern India. GS paper 1 modern India. Okay, so in the context, yes, we have clearly decoded the topics, the syllabus linkages for all that we are going to see for yesterday's and today's the Hindu International Edition newspaper. So with this 19th August இருக்கிற topics வந்து ஆரம்பிச்சிடலாம். First topic that we will be talking about is the INDIA block, right? So they are considering moving a motion for the removal of the Chief Election Commissioner. Multiple controversies around this, right? The opposition, right, was accusing, Mr. Rahul Gandhi was accusing of vote theft, was accusing the position of the Election Commission, right? So in the context of when the lot of controversies are taking place, but that is not required. Overall, one of the primary take from this is Chief Election Commissioner. What is the constitutional mandate of the Election Commission? இதுதான் நம்மளுக்கு தேவை. Okay, so in the context, yes, let us understand a few things. So here the context is very simple, right? So now ஏன் the decision இவங்க consider பண்றாங்கன்னா, because the Chief Election Commission accused the opposition of spreading misinformation, right, regarding the voter roll lists. So in the context, yes, the opposition has told that the Chief Election Commissioner is rather than doing the work of being a constitutional independent body, right, is talking like a political party spokesperson. So here there is a difference of stand, and that is why this is happening. UPSC பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் this is not required, but here what we need to understand is constitutional bodies, the Chief Election Commissioner, who appoints him, what is his tenure, right? How many member body is the Election Commission? What is the mandate of it? இதுதான் examination point of view ல இருந்து நம்மளுக்கு தேவை. So let us try understanding this. So yes, we all know, talking about elections, right? The Election Commission of India. It is a constitutional body, it is an independent body, and ஒரு primary job வந்து என்னன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா to conduct elections. Conduct elections to what? To the parliament, to the state legislature, and to the offices of the president and the vice president, right? So even recently when we saw about the resignation of the vice president, right, on the context we have discussed about Election Commission of India. So in the context, some articles which are important are number 1, Article 324, which talks about the superintendent's direction and conduct of elections should be vested with the Election Commission. Next, on the other hand, you should understand elections to the panchayats and elections to the municipalities are conducted by the State Election Commission, right? So இதுதான் வந்து about Election Commission and some articles. In the context, one article you should remember is Article 326. So Article 326 வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, it upholds the idea of adult suffrage, right? So Indian citizens aged 18 and above, right, who are eligible, whose names are there in the voter list, are eligible to vote. So in the context, Article 326 provides for that, right? So these are few things. So next in the context, let us also understand a few more things. Talking about the composition, right? Earlier வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, the Election Commission of India was a single member body, right? So what happened was long ago, right, the voting age was 21. Now when this voting age was reduced from 21 to 18, right, ultimately there was more people included, so more manpower needed. So in the context, the Election Commission of India, from being a single member body, became a 3-member body comprising 1 Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissioners. Okay, so here when they're talking about their tenure, right, so they hold office like for a term not exceeding 6 years or until the age of 65, whichever is earlier. Talking about the removal, right, the removal of the Chief Election Commissioner is very similar to the process of removal of a judge of a Supreme Court, right? So in the context regarding the removal, please go and read. The other election commissioners can be removed on the recommendation of the Chief Election Commissioner, right? So these are few things. So in the context, right, what is the background, Election Commission of India and other objectives, mandate, right, tenure, right, removal procedure eppadi, idu ellame is important. So just go through these areas, okay? So this is pretty much it. So in the context, let us solve a previous year question. Consider the following statements. The Election Commission of India is a 5-member body. What do you all think? Union Ministry of Home Affairs decides the election schedule for the conduct of both general elections and by-elections. Okay. Next, Election Commission resolves the disputes relating to splits or mergers of recognized political parties, right? So guys, take a minute, think, what do you think is the answer? So 2017 prelims la கேட்டிருக்காங்க. Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 only, option C 2 and 3 only, option D 3 only. So guys, what do you think is the answer? Reply in the comment section. What do you think is the answer? Yes, time is ticking. What do you think is the answer, guys? Option A, B, C, D. What will come? Yes. So in the context, let me tell you one thing. Prelims பொறுத்த வரைக்கும், right? Sometimes because we are learning so much, it is humanly impossible to remember many things if we do well and good. But in case if we don't, how do we arrive at the answer smartly in Pata is just by looking at the options and trying to eliminate. In the edathla, if I am able to understand that, if I take a look at statement 2. Statement 2 wrong ayiduchna, we have only one answer. So in the case, let me first analyze statement 2. So in the இடத்துல Union Ministry of Home Affairs decides the election schedule for the conduct of both general elections and by-elections is wrong because it is the Election Commission of India. So in the context, if I take out 2 everywhere, I straight away get the answer 3 only. And here we clearly know 5-member body kadayadu. So definitely this is also wrong. So here sometimes, right, you may remember இது எல்லாமே நீங்க படிச்சு தான் ஆகணும், core static areas, but somewhere you're confused, right? You're double minded. Just look at the options and see if there is a scope for elimination. Optionல வந்து eliminationக்கு scope இருந்தா, then definitely you will be able to somewhere arrive at the right answer. In the context, the correct answer is option D, 3 only. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Next, talking about a mains question, 2018 la 10 mark question, 150 words, right? In the light of the recent controversy regarding the use of electronic voting machines, what are the challenges before the Election Commission of India to ensure the trustworthiness of elections in India? Right? So Election Commission of India வச்சு நிறைய questions prelims-லையும் சரி mains-லையும் சரி வந்திருக்கு. For example, also a question on the model code of conduct, right? So questions like this are coming. So in the context, you should have a very clear-cut idea about Election Commission of India. Any constitutional, non-constitutional body news, go a little bit in depth and read the background, the static part of it, because the probability of it to come in the exam is high. Right, so on the context, so you have to cover these areas thoroughly. Okay, so here, yes, so go through this and try writing an answer to this particular question. Okay, so next, moving forward, let's talk about this alert issued against Amebic Menenjoalitis in Kozhikode. Right, so in the context of yes, in Kozhikode, right, recently there was an issue where what happened was around 3 cases were being reported and 1 death has also taken place. So how does this happen is it is through an amoeba. So இந்த amoeba வந்து எங்க இருக்கும்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா water bodies இருக்கும். So usually when people, right, when you go on a trip or anything, you come across a water body, you jump into this water body, right, through your nose, through your ear, this amoeba can enter into your body and it could be very dangerous because in the context it can cause you severe headache, vomiting, right, and sometimes worst case it can even result in death. So in the context this disease has been spreading. It's called the primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, right? So idoda causative agent is an amoeba, okay, and the name of the amoeba is Naegleria fowleri. Okay, so Naegleria fowleri is the name of the amoeba which is responsible for causing it. Usually இது பாத்தீங்கன்னா it will be found more or less in stagnant waters, contaminated water bodies அது அதிகமா இருக்கலாம், right? So usually people who go to places like a lake, etc., they're swimming over there, right? So in the context this can enter through the ears and through the nose, right, and it can enter into the body, and here பாத்தீங்கன்னா it can cause symptoms like headache, fever, vomiting, etc. children might lose their appetite, இது எல்லாமே இருக்கும். And sometimes it can even cause severe conditions like memory loss ஆகலாம். இது எல்லாமே இருக்கு with regard to this particular thing. So here in this context they have issued an advisory, and what they have said is they've asked people to restrain themselves from entering into unhygienic water bodies, right, and to avoid contaminated sites. இந்த இடத்துல swimming avoid பண்ண சொல்லியிருக்காங்க. This is the advisory which has been issued to people to create a certain degree of awareness, right? So yes, please take precautions. Anytime if you are from this particular state, also take precautions. Contaminated water sites, and you have to be watchful because we never know what we are getting attacked by, right? So in the context relating to this topic, waterborne diseases, இத பத்தி போய் படிங்க. What are some diseases which can spread through contaminated water, right? So some examples, for example, cholera. Vibrio cholerae is the causative organism. The எல்லாமே is to contaminated water. நிறைய heavy metals, okay? So heavy metals தண்ணியில் இருந்தாலுமே many diseases can be caused, right? இதை வச்சு UPSC previous year questions கேட்டிருக்காங்க. Let me give you some. Any guesses? Mercury தண்ணியில் அதிகமாக இருந்துச்சுன்னா which disease can occur? Any guesses? If mercury levels are high in water, what could be the disease that can occur? So the name of the disease is Minamata disease. அதே மாதிரி if you talk about other pollutants, for example if you talk about cadmium, cadmiumலேருந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா we can get what is called as itai. அதே மாதிரி if you talk about arsenic, too much of arsenic, chronic exposure to arsenic can cause blackfoot disease, ரைட்? அதே மாதிரி பார்த்தீங்கன்னா சில இடத்துல தண்ணியில் வந்து நைட்ரேட்ஸ் ஓட குவான்டிட்டி அதிகமாக இருந்துச்சுன்னா குழந்தைங்களோட ஃபேஸ்லாம் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா ப்ளூயிஷ் கலர் டிஞ்ச் இருக்கும். And it is also called as blue baby syndrome, okay? So yes, sometimes even blue baby syndrome is possible, right, if there is too much of nitrates in water. Fine. So these are few things we should understand. So ஏதாவது ஒரு டாபிக் படிக்கும்போது the causative organism, is it a bacteria, is it a fungus, right? Other kind of diseases which can spread through water, try to have a certain degree of clarity on this, okay? And some more things that I want you all to go and read about this zoonotic disease. Zoonotic disease. So yes, around the world zoonotic diseases are on the rise. Zoonotic diseases na enna? Diseases which can spread from animals to humans. Your COVID-19 is a great example of a zoonotic disease. So in the madri, in today's world, because the distances between animals and humans are becoming very less, right? Zoonotic diseases are also on the rise. So in the context, even the World Health Organization has advocated for something called as the One Health Initiative. One Health, இது கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா? So guys, நம்ம பார்த்த டாப்பிக்கை தாண்டி நம்ம சில நிறைய பாயிண்ட்ஸை டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணுறோம். For the simple reason being, I want this to be a value addition session for you as well. நீங்கள் மெயின்ஸ் ஆன்சர்ஸ் எழுதும்போது when you write such points in your answers as examples or in the conclusion as a positive way forward, it will enhance the quality of your answers, right? So One Health na என்ன? One Health basically means the life of animals, humans, environment is interrelated and interconnected. Okay, so the life of animals, humans and environment is interrelated and interconnected. So even if one is affected, the other will also in turn end up getting affected. Okay, so in the context science at tech angle பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் diseases are important. So go through such topics, they could be important from the examinations point of view. Fine. So next போயிடலாம். So yes, any person missing from the draft rolls may file a claim with a copy of Aadhaar, says the Election Commission, right? So Election Commission பத்தி இப்பதான் பார்த்தோம். And in this context, இந்த டாபிக் வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா GS paper 2 polity. And here this is with special reference to the special intensive revision exercise which is being undertaken in the state of Bihar, right? So background mattum purinjika try pannalam. So please understand this. So in the month of November, right, Bihar, the state of Bihar is going to go for its assembly polls. So in the context of the Election Commission of India feels that last time special intensive revision pannadu was in somewhere as early as the early 2000s, right? It's been quite some time now. Electoral role வந்து நம்ம ரிவைஸ் பண்ணணும் because many people whose names are there on the list, either they have migrated and gone or they are got deceased and நிறைய duplicate entries இருக்கு. So in the context right from end June until September the entire process is going to be fast tracked and this is called as a special intensive revision exercise. In the exercise oda objective என்ன? Number one, to go through the entire, to revise the entire voter roll, to identify who is actually eligible. Eligible-ஆ இருக்கிறவங்க இந்த லிஸ்ட்ல இருக்கலாம். Duplicate entries, illegal migrants வந்து நம்ம இந்த லிஸ்ட்ல இருந்து ரிமூவ் பண்ணிடணும். அதே மாதிரி பார்த்தீங்கன்னா ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டைம் voters நிறைய பேர் இருப்பாங்க. அவங்களையும் இதில் நம்ம இன்க்ளூட் பண்ணணும். ரைட்? ஸோ who are eligible but unregistered, they also have to be brought inside. So all this was the mandate of the special intensive revision exercise. So the Election Commission of India feels that in the state of Bihar it's a vital necessity. So in the entire process வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it has been heavily fast tracked. So what many people fear is that inclusion,
ready for UPSC journey? The Indian Express brings to you the biggest discount of the year.
Of having their name getting appeared in the electoral roll. Eligible but unregistered, they also have to be brought inside. Revision should be more of inclusion and not exclusion. Okay, so that is what has been told, and in the context yes, there has been lot of criticism from the opposition parties, right? There's been lot of issues that have been imposed upon the Election Commission of India. Yes, how the process will be done அப்படினு பாத்தீங்கன்னா let us understand this. So usually the special intensive revision exercise நடக்கும்போது a very good morning to all of you. Level officer this is Vilasini from Veranda IAS. Okay, the booth level officer. இன்னைக்கு என்ன பார்க்க பண்ணுவாங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா வீடு வீடா போய் the daily current affairs analysis, the address கரெக்ட்டா இருக்கா, 19th and 20th August 2025. Next என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க documents verify பண்ணுவாங்க. I know we have all entered the mid 11 documents and usually when the midweek begins also so does for Aadhaar but irrespective of that எல்லாரும்
Imagine a home where clean air and green spaces are your everyday reality, and that's urban rice springtime.
There, they can file a claim. Okay, and then the final revised role will also be released much later. So every time you feel like giving up, ஒண்ணே யோசிச்சு பாருங்க, the draft electoral roll has been released. Why did you begin this? So in the thought names இருந்துட்டே இருந்துச்சுனா, so that has quite like resulted in an anger, a resentment because many names are missing. A very good morning to all of you. This is Vilasini from Veranda IAS. Friends, இன்னைக்கு என்ன பார்க்க போறோம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா the daily current affairs analysis. The dates are in 16th, 17th and 18th of August 2025. So I hope all of you had a fantastic and a productive weekend. So now that the weekend is done, right, it's important to start with a bright and positive Monday morning. So yes, every day before we start, we talk about something positive, correct? And check. So இன்னைக்கு வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா there was something that I wanted to discuss with all of you, okay, which is about the right environment. The right environment. Okay. So preparation பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் எல்லாருக்குமே தெரியும், right? Hard work, smart work, right? The number of hours that you study, having a right strategy, executing the strategy, இது எல்லாமே வந்து it was somewhere around 5.6%. But இப்போ ஜூலைல பார்த்தா 5.2%. So there has been a decline in the unemployment rate, right? So இதுல வந்து நிறைய findings கொடுத்திருக்காங்க. They have spoken about the labor force participation rate. They have spoken about the worker population ratio, right? Rural and urban divide எப்படி இருக்கு with regard to unemployment. Differences between men and women, how is it? That has been highlighted. Okay, so in the context yes, let us understand few things, that is the outcomes of this particular survey. So number one, we need to understand July is much better than June, number one. Next is that talking about urban rural divide, unemployment வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it was higher in urban areas than rural areas. That is one. Urban areas அதிகமா இருக்கு in comparison to rural areas. Next one, talking about the gender gap, right? What they are saying is unemployment for women in urban areas was much higher in comparison to that of men. Next, talking about the labor force participation rate. Labor force participation rate na enna? The number of people who are employed and the number of people who are actively seeking a job, right? So in the context there has been an improvement in the labor force participation rate in the context of women. So ஒரு 25.5% increase irukku, right? So that is what they are citing. Next one, they have also spoken about the employment ratio. So worker population ratio, right? So worker population ratio kuda increase ஆயிருக்கு. Worker population ratio na enna? Number of people who are working with regard to the total population. So number of workers in proportion to the total population. அதில் கூட ஒரு significant improvement இருக்கு. So yes, sometimes when you come across some statistics, right, try to make a note, it could be useful, right? So this is just a comparison between June and July. So poga poga updates can keep happening, right? So any such statistics that you come which is easy for you to remember, please make a note. That's it. In the context of unemployment causative factors, right? Poverty, unemployment, health, how they are interrelated, right? Schemes taken by the government to address the issue of unemployment, that is to promote skill development. For example, we have PM Kaushal Vikas Yojana, right? So in the madriyana things pati poi padinga, it will give you some clarity, okay? So next, moving forward, let's talk about this article. Familiar impasse talks on limiting use of plastic must be built on mutual trust, right? So in the context, yes, plastics pollution, right? Management of plastics, இது எல்லாமே features under your GS paper 3 environment, okay? So here we need to understand few things. So pollution na enna? The addition of any undesirable substance in the environment is pollution, right? So recent times, if you see, one of the like 3 major pollutions that the world is currently massively talking about is number 1, plastics. Why? Because plastics sort of consumption and plastics sort of dependence has constantly been increasing. So plastic is something that we need to tackle in this world. Next one, pata, electronics. Why? Because India has overtaken China to become the most populous country. So imagine population இவ்வளோ அதிகமாக இருந்தால் எவ்வளோ electronic gadgets, right? How do we manage them? How do we dispose them? How do we recycle them? So e-waste is also under great scope of discussion. Next, biomedical waste, especially after COVID-19, right? Biomedical waste pathina conversation is also on the rise. So in the context, you need to understand, yes, although air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, etc. are constantly in news, இந்த மாதிரியான டாபிக்ஸ் பற்றியும் நம்ம படிக்கணும். So in the context, இந்த ஆர்டிக்கல் என்ன சொல்கிறாங்கன்னா, number 1, talking about the plastic treaty, right? So நம்ம எல்லாருக்குமே தெரியும், plastic treaty வந்து it failed, right? The plastic treaty failed. Why? Because there was lack of consensus, right? Lack of consensus இருந்துச்சு. What is the major reason for the failure, right? There were 2 groups. 2 group இருந்துச்சு. One was the high ambition coalition and the next one was the like-minded countries. So என்னாச்சுன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, high ambition coalition was led by countries like Rwanda and Norway, and they felt that பிளாஸ்டிக்கே யூஸ் பண்ணாமல் பிளாஸ்டிக்கு வேறு ஏதாவது சப்ஸ்டிடியூட் இல்லை பிளாஸ்டிக் ப்ரொடக்ஷனே நம்ம கம்மி பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னா அவங்க, that is their stand. Like-minded countries, many petrochemical nations, what they feel is that rather than focusing on reducing plastic at source, right? Let's talk about plastic waste. Let's talk about plastic management. Let's talk about recycling plastics, reducing the plastic waste. How do we integrate it back to the main systems? So here there was a divided opinion, right? Idanala countries were not able to arrive at a clear-cut consensus, right? So here if you see, the problem is not just about not arriving at a consensus, but the problem comes down to the very fact that we are not able to identify a solution to a pressing environmental issue. So plastics, right, they continue to stay in the environment. They are non-biodegradable, right? And plastics வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா they can break into tiny fragments. இது ரிலேட்டடான சில கான்செப்ட்ஸ் பற்றி பார்த்தோம். Bioaccumulation. They can concentrate and accumulate within the human body, right? Plastics health கூட severely impact பண்ணலாம். For example, studies have said that plastic fragments have been found in the placenta, breast milk. So to that extent, plastics can be very damaging, right? So the எல்லாமே வந்து some of the like you know the negative points of plastic and its implication on health. So overall வந்து பார்த்தா, now if the world is going to have a divided stand on addressing plastic and no one is going to take responsibility, right, it becomes very difficult. So in the article என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னா, further discussions on plastic and plastic waste management should be built on mutual trust. Plastic as an issue நம்ம rectify பண்ணி address பண்ணணும். We need to find alternatives. We need to manage plastic waste, right? All this has been the scope of discussion. So in the context of plastic or nature, right, and the countries who are most affected are actually island countries, right? Be it climate change, be it anything, right? The truth is, the countries which contribute the least to pollution are the most affected by it. and the countries which contribute the most to pollution are least affected by it. This is the reality of today, right? So in the context of plastic treaty, some of the outcomes of plastic treaty, why has there been a divide? Some countries, especially the like-minded countries, அவங்க என்ன feel பண்றாங்கன்னா, they primarily feel that all of a sudden plastic or dependence complete if we cut it down, right, it would disrupt entire trade, disrupt entire supply chains. The world has been so dependent on it. So here slowly we can try addressing it, but at a time trying to shift massively can be very difficult and can cause many challenges, right? Bottlenecks, supply chain bottlenecks can be there. So in the context it could disrupt trades and that could be very impactful, right? So in the context the differences of opinion is there, but here it comes down to having a consensus, working on an agreement with mutual trust, right? So here ஒரு environmental issue நம்ம significantly address பண்ணணும். It comes down to that, right? It's not just about two different parties not having differences of opinion, not taking up the issue. So in the context the least that we can do as responsible citizens is to incorporate sustainability in our daily life. So plastics or dependence கம்மி பண்ணி try to shift to like jute bags, paper bags, try to use alternatives instead, right? So this is the least that you can do from your end to make this world a better place, right? So let's move forward. So in the context let us try solving this question. இதை நம்ம already பார்த்திருக்கோம். Why is there a great concern about microbeads which are released into the environment? 2019 prelims question. They are considered harmful to marine ecosystems. They are considered to cause skin cancer in children. They are small enough to be absorbed by crop plants in irrigated fields. They are often found to be used as food adulterants, right? So we've already seen this and I told you that microbeads has been discussed with regard to marine ecosystems, right? They are microplastics. So in the context they can be ingested, right? They can be broken down into tiny fragments and they can enter the food chain. So in the context microbeads, இதை பற்றி போய் படிங்க. Okay, so moving forward, let us understand this. So Zelensky, Trump hope for trilateral talks with Putin, right? So நம்ம last few days we have been discussing a few things about the Alaska summit. So who participated in the Alaska summit, right? We definitely know that number one you had Russia, right? And on this side you also had US. So Trump and Putin had met and they were discussing, it happened in Alaska, right? So the discussion was revolving around the Russia-Ukraine war, right? What needs to be the way forward? So in the context Russia had its own stance on what were its demands, right? And what is US's position? US says we have to go for peace, right? Peace is the way forward. Okay, so in the context yes, what have been the outcomes enna nadandirukku over the last few days, let us try understanding that. So here yes, so in the context earlier, right, Trump his notion was that, right, there has to be ceasefire, but இப்போ பார்த்தா he has slightly changed his opinion from immediate ceasefire and he says rather let's persuade towards peace, right? Let's talk about peace between both these nations. Okay, so here what has been Russia's stand? So Russia enna solduna, Russia is not happy with Ukraine being a part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, next Russia is asking for recognition of some of its territories that it annexed from Ukraine, right? For the territories that Russia, Ukraine lende edutha territories ku recognition kekranga. For example, Crimea, right? Adhe mari many more places like Kherson, etc. They are asking for some recognition for the territories that they have taken over. And idhe mari they also want the Western sanctions to be lifted up. This has been Russia's side, okay? But here overall going forward, what have been the discussions so far abdin paatha? Number one, right? Russia has also agreed to few things. So Russia enna agree pannirukanga na, US can offer Ukraine Article 5 like protection with regard to the NATO. So NATO பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் there is something called as Article 5. So the Article 5 is very significant under NATO. So என்னன்னு பார்த்தா an attack on one member is seen as a collective attack on all members. So in the context this at least will help improve the position of Ukraine, right? So US can offer an Article 5 like protection. That is what Russia is trying to agree to, right? And Russia also says that it will further not annex any more territories. அதையும் சொல்லியிருக்காங்க. So this has been the way forward. So latest developments என்ன அப்படின்னு பார்த்தா, right, talking about protection for Ukraine, a collective protection, right? So US has said that US will provide, like, you know, air cover for Ukraine. It did not talk about deployment of troops, but air cover protection கொடுக்கலாம்னு சொல்லியிருக்காங்க. European Union talks about ground troops, right? Like other countries like the France, Germany, etc. They've said, okay, we'll also contribute to ground troops for Ukraine's safety. NATO membership பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் Trump has also been mooting the idea, and Trump has also been telling Ukraine that, like, you know, to refrain from like joining NATO or being a part, being a part of NATO. That was being discussed. And also, yes, Trump has also mentioned that, you know, Ukraine has to accept the fact that some of its territories are taken over by Russia, and like, you know, it cannot be very aggressive in this because we have to progress towards peace. So yes, inga da vanda discussions vandirukku, and in the future course of action there is maybe, like, you know, possibilities that Russia, US and Ukraine will be discussing together and taking this forward. Okay, so this is the outcome so far of the ongoing issue. So in the context, yes, we have understood this topic. Let's move forward to the next topic. It's about a species. Okay, we're talking about saltwater crocodile. So Sundarbans in Bengal, right, saltwater crocodile or population vandu pathingana it has increased. That is what a recent survey has said, right? So in the context, number one, we need to understand about Sundarbans. And next we also need to understand about the term biosphere reserve, and we also need to understand a few things about saltwater crocodiles. Okay, so let us understand a few things over here. Yes, so number one, let's talk about this. Okay, so now if we talk about Sundarbans, right? So Sundarbans is famous for mangroves. In fact, Sundarbans ku pere vandu pathina it comes from a particular kind of plant found here called as the Sundari tree. So idhula enna Sundarbans ku adoda pere varudhu, right? It is also famous for housing the Royal Bengal tiger, right? And here vandu pathina there is an environment concept that you all have to go and read, which is called as, for example, when you look at ecotone. For example, when you look at intermediate, you need to understand two ecosystems, right? Why so is it happening? Mangrove, what are the trigger factors? Example of what will be the implications?
So when one सुना होगा, 3 in 1 भी सुना होगा, चलो 4 in 1 भी सुना होगा. Introducing the future of term plans
because the solutions are self-reliance. The Prime Minister has also mentioned that self-fronting protected areas பற்றி பேசும்போது we have spoken about national parks, wildlife sanctuaries. Biosphere reserves are also a type of protected areas. So biosphere reserves பொறுத்த வரைக்கும், number one, they are very large in area, they are very large in size. Second one வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா they include both terrestrial and marine regions. And number three, they aim at conserving both the natural and the cultural landscape, right? So these are few things about biosphere reserves, right? So here biosphere reserves, what is about it? Ada understand panna try pannunga. Next, every biosphere reserve has three particular zones. Okay, it's divided into three zones. Three zones enna pathina, number 1, you have what is called as the core zone. Next, on number 2, you have what is called as the buffer zone. And number 3, you have what is called as the transition zone. So biosphere reserves are very large in sonna. So usually enna solvangana, the core zone of a biosphere reserve could either be a national park or a wildlife sanctuary, right? So now, so are you able to understand how large are we talking about over here, right? Idu vandu or national park ah irukkalam or wildlife sanctuary ah irukkalam, right? And here vandu it has to have minimal disturbance, right? Because the idea is to conserve the species found over here. So minimal disturbance inge irukano. Next, if we talk about the buffer zone, it is intermediate between the core and the transition. And usually enna solvangana, buffer la enna activity nadandalume, it should help in conserving the core zone better. So here research and development, right? Limited activities like, you know, fishing, etc. is allowed. Transition zone, this is where the role of the people comes in, right? We said biosphere reserve aims at conserving natural and cultural landscape. So people's livelihood, their culture, etc. comes in the transition zone, right? So this is biosphere reserve. So read about it. In the context, I also want you to read about UNESCO's UNESCO's MAB program. MAB program கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா? The Man and Biosphere program, right? So please understand this. Indiaல வந்து how many biosphere reserves are there in பார்த்தீங்கன்னா we have 18 biosphere reserves. Out of these 18, world network of biosphere reserves 12 are recognized. Okay, so these are few things you need to understand. So ஒரு டாபிக் பார்க்கும்போது அதோட பேக்ரவுண்ட் அதோட ஸ்டாட்டிக் பார்ட்டை நீங்கள் படித்தா மட்டும்தான் you will have some clarity on these topics. Next, with regard to this, let us understand a few things about crocodiles, right? So number one, right, crocodile அப்படின்னு பேசும்போது crocodile comes under the category of being a reptile, right? A reptile. So guys, a very simple question to you. So yes, in the crocodiles வந்து பார்த்தா you find them in water, right? You find them in land as well. So here, right, amphibian crocodile. Amphibian crocodile can a difference. We usually say amphibians are animals found in both land and water. So technically crocodiles are also found both in land and water. Sea turtles are found both on land, I mean mostly in water, but they come on to land as well. So they should also be called as amphibians, right? Why do we call them as reptiles and not amphibians? So let me tell you, differences can be more. For example, நீங்கள் ஒரு ஃப்ராகை பாருங்கள். ஃப்ராக் இஸ் an example of an amphibian, கரெக்டாக? ஃப்ராகோட ஸ்கின்னை பார்த்தீங்கன்னா ரப்பரி டெக்ஸ்சர் இருக்கும். பட் இதுவே நீங்கள் ரெப்டைல் பார்க்கும்போது it will have scales on its body. Next, if we talk about its eggs, have you seen the eggs of a frog? Jelly-like structure. But if we talk about crocodiles, they'll have shelled eggs. Right? If you look at the feet, many differences are there. This is what distinguishes an amphibian and a reptile, right? And not just the fact whether they are found in land and water. இது உங்களோட remembrance-காக you might have learnt like this in school, but now since you're upskilling yourself, your definitions and your understanding of topics also need to improve, right? So in the context, these are few things about reptiles. Now let's talk about what the survey has pointed out with regard to this. So Sundarbans, West Bengal, என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னா, the population of saltwater crocodiles has improved in 2025. So yes, இதில் என்ன சொல்கிறாங்க, the number of hatchlings, right, the babies, right, or the sightings have increased, which is very positive. And talking about numbers, right, 125 adults are there, right, and apart from that you have 88 juveniles, 23 hatchlings, right, and all this is a very positive move. So here in this context, right, let us also understand few things. India வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா there are three major types of crocodiles that we can find over here. Number one, the saltwater crocodile. Number two, we have the mugger or the marsh crocodile. Number three, we have what is called as the gharial. Gharial. Okay, so these are the three crocodiles which are found in India. So இதில் வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா let me ask you a question. Do you know which state in India has all the three crocodiles? Right? If you know, please mention in the comment section. Okay, yes. So now moving forward, let's understand a few things about saltwater crocodiles, right? So yes, saltwater crocodiles, it is the largest of all the living crocodiles, number one. Okay, and it is also infamously known by the name called as the man-eater, right? So நீங்க பார்த்திருக்க நிறைய மூவிஸ்ல பார்க்குற மாதிரி it's a gigantic crocodile, right? And here வந்து its population is quite good. But here it is also known to attack many animals in many places. Instances of human animal conflict have also been reported. So India பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் we can find this in Sundarbans, we can find this in Bitakarnika National Park of Odisha, right? We can find this in other places, even in Southeast Asia. IUCN Red List பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் it is a least concerned species, right? So these are few things you need to know with regard to the saltwater crocodile, right? So in the context, sir, there is one previous year question talking about gharials. If you want to see gharials in their natural habitat, which one of the following is the best place to visit? 2017 prelims கேட்டிருக்காங்க, right? So Bitakarnika mangroves, Chambal River, Pulicat Lake, Diopar, Deal. So here the answer is Chambal River, right? So இந்த மாதிரி questions examல வரும், right? So here because gharial was there, knowing about the other varieties of crocodiles, the other types of crocodiles also really matters. So have you heard about gharials, right? Very unique crocodiles, right? They are less known to harm humans. Mostly வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா the gharial வந்து will eat fish. Very unique feature is that it has a very long snout. Okay, very long snout. அதோட teeth ஒரு டிசைனுமே பார்த்தீங்கன்னா it is designed in such a way that it can easily capture and eat fish. Okay, so these are few things about the saltwater crocodile and about gharials. Please go and solve this. Okay, please go and revise the static topics of this. Next, moving forward, a science and tech topic, right? Early embryos push pull to shape how they attach inside the uterus, right? So here in the context there, this topic basically talks about embryo implantation. It talks about miscarriages, why is it happening, strong embryo versus weak embryo, and இதோட findings வந்து have given a new perspective to how we understand science and tech related topics pertaining to miscarriages, right? So in the context, yes, let us understand few things. So you all know fertilization ஆனதுக்கு அப்புறம், right, zygote and then later the embryo if you see, it has to attach itself to the mother's womb, right? So that is how it happens. But in the context வந்து, right, few findings have been found. So here வந்து researchers from the Institute for Bioengineering of Catalonia in Spain, they basically said human embryos just do not passively just sit in the uterus, but it actually, like, you know, moves around, makes movements, right, pushes and pulls itself to go and stick into the uterine wall. So here there are many mechanical forces which are operating. Earlier வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா researchers used to primarily think that it was because of they used to study the chemical factors, right, responsible for miscarriages, but in the context of the mechanical forces were largely ignored. But here in the study என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னா embryos ரெண்டு டைப் இருக்கு, strong embryo இருக்கு, weak embryo இருக்கு. Strong embryo ஓட mechanical forces and movements will be much more stronger. They tend to push and pull harder such that they go and attach themselves to the uterine wall. But on the other hand, weak embryos, they do not move around much, right? And because their overall push and pull forces are less, right, they fail to attach to the uterine wall, and that could also be one of the major reasons for miscarriages to take place. Yes, so in the context, this is a very nice study because it helps us to understand that apart from the earlier existing factors, right, the push and the pull forces, the mechanical forces kuda paatha could be responsible for elections to the panchayats and elections to the municipalities. Pregnancy doesn't could also be one of the major reasons in the context for this topic has been discussed, right? Yes, so you see event, right, similarly is a Kathua district, right, study question was unfortunately a cloud developed event which has also triggered existing like, you know, massive landslides as a result of which certain people have lost lives, right? Rescue options are underway. So in the context, yes, it is quite unfortunate that instances like this are increasing in the Indian Himalayan region. நம்ம பேசினதுதான், please go back and read. We already discussed what is a cloudburst, century colonial Calcutta. Why, right? So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, what are they talking about a person by the name Henry Vivian Derozio, right? Henry Vivian Derozio. So we need to understand 19th century பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் there were many movements which were taking place in the Indian society. You had reformist movements, you had revivalist movements. Reformist movements வந்து they wanted to reform and bring about a change in the society. Revivalist வந்து they were more aggressive in their approach. Okay, so for example, நீங்க ராஜாராம் மோகன் ராய் பிரம்மோ சமாஜ் பத்தி படிக்கும்போது it is a reformist movement. When you read about revivalists, right, Arya Samaj, for example, the Shuddhi movement which was started, this is to do with the revivalist movement. So in the context, Henry Vivian Derozio, very young person, right, he was greatly inspired by the ideas of enlightenment and French Revolution. The differences of opinion. So even when the pathingana, he was teaching students in the Hindu college, right, and here he basically targeted. So here somewhere it can have a rational mindset, to question orthodoxy, to pick and write egalitarian society. What sets apart your answer from another person's answer is value addition. Value addition can be statistics, examples, key terms, case studies, etc. So the more examples, and more statistics. Teaching as young as 17 years of age, right? And in the context of right, he said to have inspired many students. He said to have asked them to question orthodox ideals, right? Rational thinking, notions of liberty, equality, fraternity. இது எல்லாமே அவர் one help basically. Apart from that, some of his works, right? Some of his works include To India, My Native Land, right? And The Fakir of Jangira. These are some of his works, right? So in the context, there's an elaborate article, so it is important to understand a few things about socio-religious reform movements, the major movements which took place. Henry Vivian Derozio பத்தி பேசியிருக்கிறதுனால, who is this person, what was his contribution, right, and what were some of his works. இவ்வளோ தெரிஞ்சா போறோம் from the examinations point of view. So yes, இன்னைக்கு வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா we have covered many significant topics. Please go back and read. And there were also some topics which were constantly repeating in the paper which I haven't covered because இதை பத்தி நம்ம நிறைய வாட்டி டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணிட்டோம். For example, updates to the in detail about the special intensive revision exercise, right? Next about the governor, the ongoing issue. Next வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா Israel Palestine conflict, right? And I've also been talking about Jammu and Kashmir பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் the cloud burst, right? And the landslide events which have taken place in Kathua. So in the context, all this has been covered. Updates are there. Please go take a look. I hope the discussion was useful. Thank you.